All right, welcome. Our second class, because we didn't have class last week due to being out for a conference. Had a great opportunity to go up to Arlington. It was basically snow on the ground the entire time we were up there. So that was an interesting experience. Um, Great opportunity to attend a conference for the first time that's event services professionals. So when sales sells the event for the hotel or the venue, then the event services take over. So sales sells the event to the client, and they pass it on to the event services side where they actually service the event, make sure that everything is followed through, all the vendors are there. And so this conference was really about all those individuals that are part of the event services side. And it was a really interesting conference. Today, for revenue management, we're going to talk about chapter 2 is going to talk about things we can look at internally with our hotel or property. And then chapter 3 is going to talk about how we take those internal metrics and how we apply it to compare to see how we are doing against our competition. Okay. Um, so total revenue, occupancy, RevPAR, and ADR are metrics known as what? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Total revenue, occupancy percentage, RevPAR, and ADR are metrics known as what? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Show me with your fingers. Okay, the answer is 2. Key performance indicators. Okay. KPI is key performance indicators. These are essentially things that we are looking at to make sure that we are either on budget, on target from what we plan to do, um, or also just kind of plan to see how far off of our budget we are. Okay. So we talked about that kind of briefly on the first day of class because I wanted you to get through that the KPI, the occupancy percentage, the RevPAR ADR homework assignment. And so KPIs is a term that you're going to hear in business in general. Okay. Does not necessarily specific to hospitality. It's just these are the key performance indicators for a hotel that we are going to be looking at. Okay. So revenue, how much money we brought in, the ADR, which stands for average daily rate, good. Occupancy percentage is how full our hotel is, and revenue per available room. Okay. We're going to get a little bit more practice with these today. True or false? Thumbs up for true, thumbs down for false. Comparing performance KPIs can be used for both internal and external comparisons. True or false? So we can use these KPIs, the same occupancy percentage, we can use it for internal and external comparisons. True or false?
True.
Okay, thumbs up, true. Yes. So we can compare it to ourselves basically on our budget on how much we plan to do, how full we plan our hotel to be, how much revenue do we plan to bring in, what was our target average daily rate, etc. We can also, which we'll talk about in chapter 3, a little bit more, how we can actually compare that to our external components, to our competitors. All right, so when we are comparing those numbers, we're looking at historical figures, okay? So we can look and see when the last time we had Final Four for women, the women's Final Four is coming to San Antonio in 2027, okay? The last time they were here was in 2021. We can look back and see, okay, what happened in 2021? What was our average daily rate during that time period? What was our occupancy percentage? Okay. And we can take that historical data and compare after the women's Final Four leaves in 2027. We can compare. Did we do as good as we did in 2021? Why or why not? Okay. We can, like I mentioned before, we can look at the budget. So if our budget says our ADR should be at 175 and our ADR is at 180, what does that mean? If our budget says we should be at 175 and we do the calculations and we find out that our ADR is at 180, what does that mean? Is that good or bad? It's good, right? That means our ADR is higher than we thought what we wanted it to be. Okay. And then the third comparison is what we compare to our competitors, to our industry average. Okay. We're going to go to a luncheon for the San Antonio Hotel Lodging Association. We're going to go to a luncheon I believe it's in March when we get back from spring break. And at that luncheon, they're going to talk about the industry averages of the ADR occupancy and RevPAR. Okay. Now, when you go to this luncheon, if you have no clue what they're talking about, that's totally fine. It probably took me at least 2 or 3 years to go to this luncheon and to be like looking at all the charts that they show to actually understand the information. Okay. So my goal for us to go to this luncheon for Sala is twofold. One, to give you experience going to a professional association luncheon. Okay. And two is to at least hear this terminology, ADR, occupancy, RevPAR, in a professional presentation. Okay. So that's my main goal for that. Before we leave today, I need to make sure I get forms filled out for each one of you so I can get the college to pay for the luncheon. Okay. So someone please remind me. If I say we're done, someone raise your hand and be like, Mr. Minsky, don't forget the forms. Okay. So questions about how we compare our ADR, occupancy, and RevPAR to these three standards. Does anybody need another additional example on any one of these three? Like, no, if we say no, nobody raises their hand, we get out of class faster.
No, did you say, do we need any?
Yeah, I'm asking, do you need another example from any one of those three categories? I'm happy to expand if you need. If not, we'll move on.
Of the historical figures.
Yeah. So again, remember, if you've taken RSTO 2301, the food and beverage cost control class, we talk about budgeting using historical data to plan for the future. The same thing, right? So we look at this year, Valentine's Day is it Saturday or Sunday this year?
Saturday.
Saturday, right? So we can look at historical data from when Valentine's Day is on Saturday versus when Valentine's Day is on a Wednesday, right? And then we can plan accordingly to that. And so as we're developing our budget, we're looking at that historical data. So if last year or the last time that Valentine's Day was on a Saturday, our average daily rate was $200. Well, then maybe we're going to try to shoot for 225 this year, like try to increase that ADR. Okay. And then on February 15th, when I look at the information of what the results were, that's when we move to this middle one where we're looking at the budgeted figure. So if I budgeted for 225 based on my historical data, then on February 15th, I can look to see what was my ADR. Was it 225 or was it higher or lower? Okay. Do the same thing for occupancy percentage and RevPAR. Okay. So March 2019, occupancy is projected to be lower than 2018. Our hotel performed the best in our comp set, and the July ADR is on track to exceed our goal. So these are three different examples. Okay. So March 2019, occupancy is projected to be lower than 2018. Which one of the three scenarios does that describe?
MVA or the historical figures?
Yeah, right. So we're looking at historical 2019, 2018. So that's going to be looking at historical figures. Okay. What about our hotel performed the best in our comp set?
See, that's the average.
Okay, so that's going to be our C. Our comp set is the industry averages. We'll talk about that in just a second. And the last one, by default, the July ADR is on track to exceed our goal. So we're looking at that as part of our budgeted figures, right? Our goal is our budget. Questions about how these examples apply to each one of these three categories? No, I'm just an amazing teacher and you guys got it the first time. Sweet. All right, comp set. Comp is short for what?
Competitive?
Competitive. Competitive, yeah. Comp is short for competitive, okay? These are our competition. The competition is basically the hotels that are similar, that are going after the similar guest, okay? So if our hotel is going after, let's say we're close to the airport, and we're going after those business travelers that need a shuttle to and from the airport, right? Versus someone who's a convention hotel where someone's going to come and stay in town for 2 or 3 days for a convention downtown. Well, that airport hotel and that downtown hotel are not in the same comp set. They're not going to go after the same guest. Okay. Now, if we have what's called a citywide, the citywide is where no one hotel can host that whole group. Okay. So when we have 20,000 people from the American Dental Association come in for a conference, we don't have one hotel that has 20,000 hotel rooms. So we have to do a citywide. So that in that case, a lot of the hotels are going to be competing against each other for that particular time period. But you typically have your set comp set. It basically, again, you're going after the same type of guest. Okay, the same clientele. So let's ask some questions. Can a La Quinta and a Marriott be in the same comp set? Yes or no? What do you think? Can a La Quinta and a Marriott be in the same comp set? La Quinta, remember, is more of a select service. Marriott is that full service. So can they be in the same comp set? See a lot of no's. Well, what if the Marriott is right here, La Quinta is right here, and the convention center is right here? If they are both convention hotels and they're both going after the same clientele of going to the conventions, are they in the same comp set?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do hotels have to, oh, sorry, I forgot a word right there. Do hotels have to be right next to each other to be in the same comp set? What do you think? Yes or no? Do they have to, just like that Marriott and La Quinta are right next to each other, right across the street? So do you think they have to be right next to each other to be in the same comp set? Yes or no?
No.
I see a lot of hands down, no, thumbs down, no. Okay. So we have JW Marriott is out in the Stone Oak area. We have Lock and Terra Resort, which is now, is it Cigna? Yeah, Cigna. Yeah. So it's a Cigna, which is a Hilton property. So they just took that over. So that's Cigna Hilton, Lock and Terra Resort. And we have SeaWorld Hyatt Hill Country Resort. Okay. They are all resorts. They're all going after the same clientele, resort clientele. Okay. They all have convention centers or big conference rooms with ballrooms. Okay. So they're going after the same types of groups. Now, when we look at competitors between Hyatt Hill Country, La Cantera is really close to Six Flags. Hyatt Hill Country is really close to SeaWorld. So the comp set, they may be in a comp set together for the resort clientele, but then the Hyatt Hill Country might also be in a comp set for the Residence Inn, or all the hotels that are around the SeaWorld area, because they're going after the same clientele that are going close to SeaWorld, right? So you can determine what you want your comp set to be. Okay. Questions about comp sets? Yeah.
I understood everything except for the Marriott versus La Quinta, right? Because
Yeah.
these are all going towards convention centers, right? You
Right.
know, but
Or
the-
they're mostly resort guests.
Right, but the Marriott and the La Quinta,
Uh-huh.
I didn't understand that because, what if the Marriott has, a convention center and the La Quinta doesn't?
Right. Okay. So the San Antonio Marriott's right here.
Huh?
The La Quinta is right here. Okay. And they are very close to the convention center. So when they're going after convention center guests, people like conferences that are going to the convention center, then they're going after they're going after the same guests, right? So coming up, we have next weekend or this week is TMEA. Are y'all busy with TMEA? Oh, yeah. Okay. So TMEA is Texas Music Educators Association and Texas Bandmasters. They combine their two conferences. And so TMEA is a citywide. Fun fact about TMEA, they were the very first conference that we had back after the pandemic. It's always in February. So February 2021, they came back. They were the first conference to come back and meet in person. But so in that case, for TMEA, La Quinta and Marriott are going after the same guests because all the meetings are happening in the convention center. Now, if the Marriott has a group that only has, are y'all busy for TMEA as well? Okay, sorry, I forgot you're a downtown property. Where am I there downtown? Are you busy for TMEA? Do you know at the airport? Probably not. Okay. And you guys are at Fairfield, Spring Hill. Are y'all busy for TMEA?
Not as far as on the list.
Okay. And you may not know, it may just be people made their reservations on their own versus being part of a room block, being part of a conference. But a lot of times when we have these citywides, when they're going through there, they're asking for a specific rate at these different hotels. So where was it going? Oh, yeah. So if there's a group that can be hosted internally by the Marriott, okay, Marriott has 1,000 rooms. La Quinta probably has 300 something, right? So in that case, they're not necessarily in the same comps. They're not going after the same clientele. But when it comes to conventions, they are in the same comp set.
Oh, okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
All right. Contribution margins. What is the root word of contribution?
The
Contribute. Yes. Okay. So this is how I remember this. Contribution margin is what contributes to the profit. Okay. The contribution margin is what contributes towards our profit. Okay. And the way we find that out is we take the room rate minus our variable costs. Okay. Think back in a previous class if you've talked about fixed costs and variable costs. Okay. Fixed are things we cannot change, our rent, the salaries, things like that. Variable costs are those things that we only get charged. We only have to pay those variable costs if what? Yeah, if we sell the room, right? So if I don't sell the room, do I have to replace the sheets? Do I have to replace the soap and shampoo? Do I have to pay somebody to clean that room? No. So those are all variable costs, right? So when we want to look at what our contribution margin is, which contributes again to our profit, we're going to take what our room rate is and we're going to subtract out those variable costs. Okay. What's left over is the contribution margin. That's going to cover that dollar amount. It's going to cover our fixed costs and whatever our profit is. Okay. And this allows us to be able to take away those variable costs to compare things a little bit more equally. And we're going to use this in a formula in just a moment. Okay. So the one thing I love about this formula, identical net revenue. Okay. Identical net revenue. We have two different types of revenue. Gross revenue and net revenue. Does this sound familiar? Gross revenue, net revenue. How many of you does not sound familiar? Hey, awesome. So think about your paychecks, right? When you think about your paycheck that you take home, you have a gross pay and you have your net pay. The gross is your total. The net, what you actually take home, is your gross minus all of your taxes and insurance and benefits and things like that. Okay. And so the way that I usually explain this is, let's say we have a pond right here. Okay. And we have some fish in this pond. Okay. When I was in the first grade, I wanted to be an artist, and I'm glad that didn't pan out. I didn't stick with that. All right, so that is our gross. The whole pond of all the fish is our gross, right? And then we take our net right here, and whatever we scoop up is our net. That's what we actually take home with us. The rest of it stays. Okay? So that's how I distinguish between gross revenue. That's all the money that we brought in. The net revenue is what we actually take home with us. Okay? At the end of the day, our profit after all of our bills have been paid. So we can actually use this idea of the contribution margin to be able to calculate what would happen if my rate is $250, okay? If my rate is $250 and I want to drop it down to $200, what occupancy do I have to have in order to maintain an identical net revenue? Meaning the exact amount of money that I'm going to take home because I'm dropping my rate, right? If I go from 200 to down to 150, I'm dropping my rate, which means those rooms that I'm selling at that lower rate, I'm getting less money for because I have to subtract those variable costs. So what we're going to do is we're going to determine if we decide to drop our rate to 150, what occupancy do I have to achieve? What occupancy do I have to get to in order to have that identical net revenue? And if that occupancy is way too far out of reach, then I'm probably just better off sticking with my normal rate because then I don't have to clean those extra rooms. But if I drop my rate and I don't achieve that occupancy, I'm creating extra work. I'm using extra expenses in linen, in laundry detergent. And so with that identical net revenue, if I can achieve that new percentage, then I'm at least guaranteed to not lose any net revenue. Right? So let's do a couple of examples and we'll work through this. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take our current contribution margin. You're going to want to write this down. Okay? Our current contribution margin divided by the new contribution margin. And we're going to multiply that by our current occupancy percentage. Okay, I'm going to drop off this times 100. I'm going to show you why in just a second. Okay, so current contribution margin divided by our new contribution margin. So current is what our current rate is minus that variable cost. The new one is what rate are we considering? So what rate are we considering to drop our daily rate to minus those variable costs? Because remember, it cost me the same to clean that room, to launder the linen, okay? And then we're going to multiply it by whatever our current occupancy percentage is. One reason why we might do this, identical net revenue, is maybe because our occupancy isn't as high as we thought it was going to be, okay? Maybe we don't see people making reservations on the same trend or the same level that they did the year before. Okay? So let's use that Valentine's Day on Saturday example. If we look at Saturday next week, it's Valentine's Day. I'm a week out, right? About a week and a half out. And I look at my occupancy and it's lower than I thought it was going to be. Maybe it's because my rate is too high. Maybe I priced people out and they're not deciding to book. So I'm going to consider, okay, a week and a half out, what happens if I drop my rate a little bit? Is that going to help boost my occupancy? But if I drop my rate a certain dollar amount, again, I want to make sure that I have the identical net revenue. If I did nothing today and I took no more reservations, this is how much money, this is my net revenue. But if I drop my rate, I'm going to have to get X number of reservations to get back up to this level of net revenue. Okay? Because now I have to clean those rooms, I have to launder the linen, all that stuff. So let's look at this example right here. Our current occupancy rate is 80%. Currently, we have $200 as our ADR, and we are looking at dropping it to $150. We want to try to get back up to that, as close to that 100% as possible. The variable cost is $15. Okay? So we take the new contribution margin. Sorry, we take the current contribution margin. So it's current over the new times the current occupancy percentage. So our current ADR is 200 minus 15. Our new 150 minus 15. And then this is going to be equal, or we're going to multiply this by 80%. What happens when we multiply 80%, 0.80 times 100? What does that do?
I'm so sorry.
It just moves that decimal place over 2 spots, right? Because there's 2 zeros and 100. So that's why I took out this times 100. And rather than taking the extra step to convert it back to as a decimal, just go ahead and multiply by the occupancy percentage, right? Just go ahead and multiply by 80. So let's work this out step by step so you can kind of see how it goes. So what is 200 minus 15?
175 or no? 185?
185. Okay. And what is 150 minus 15? 135? Yep, thank you. So when you divide those two numbers, first of all, is your answer larger or smaller than 1?
Larger.
It should be larger. It should be more than 1, right? Because this number is bigger. If you get to a point where you have a number smaller than 1, you flipped your numbers around. Okay? I'm gonna say that one more time. If you're doing this and you get a number that's smaller than 1, you have your numbers flipped. Okay? So 185 divided by 135 is what? 1 point, give me 2 decimals. 37, okay? So everyone follow along in your calculators so you can see where we're getting these numbers from. 185 divided by 135 is equal to 1.37. Again, this number should be larger than 1. Now, we're going to multiply this by 80%. Okay? So, should our answer be larger or smaller than 80?
Smaller.
We're going to go bigger, right? Because 80 times 1 is 80. And then 80 times 0.37 is a certain number. We're going to add that on top of it. So what is our answer?
I got 109.6.
109.6. Do you guys all agree?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we have more than 100% occupancy in our hotel? No. So is it achievable? Is this achievable for us to drop our rate by $50?
No.
No. Because our answer is more than 100%. I can't drop my rate by $50 because I'd have to get, in order to get the same amount of revenue, I have to sell out 100 and I have to go 9.6% higher. That's just not possible. Okay? So mathematically, it tells me I can't drop my rate to 150. Just can't do it. Okay? We could repeat the cycle again and see. So the more drastic the drop in price, the more drastic the percentage you have to achieve. Okay? Let's do some other examples. Okay? So current occupancy is 65. My current ADR is 99. I'm going to drop my rate, I want to drop my rate by $10. And my variable cost is only $12. Okay. So remember, current is on the top. So 99 minus 12. And our proposed or our new is 89 minus that same $12. Because remember, that's the variable cost. If I sell that room, I have to pay that $12 in variable cost. If I don't sell it, I don't have to pay it. So what is, I'm going to do it right above, okay, and right below, so we can look and see. What is 99 minus 12?
87.
We all agree, $87. Okay, and what is 89 minus 12? 77. Okay. So my formula is $87 divided by $77. And what does that equal? We know it's 1. We want 2 decimal places. 1 point. Brianne, what'd you get? Oh, okay. I thought you looked up. I thought you were done. 87 divided by 77 is 1.12. Yeah, 1.12, 1.12. Okay. So 1.12. And now that is our factor. And now we're going to multiply what is our current occupancy?
65%.
Divide by 65. Don't put the decimal in there. So what is 1.12 times 65? Josh, what'd you get?
70.44.
73.44%. So what this is telling me is if I want to drop my rate by $10, okay, I need to go from 65% to 73.44% in order to maintain the identical net revenue. The same amount of money I'm going to take home. Because remember, if I don't clean those rooms, if I don't sell them, I don't have to clean them. So if I sell no more rooms after today and I stay at 65%, I'm going to get a certain dollar amount in revenue. Okay. But if I sell that room, if I sell more rooms and I sell them at a lower price, I'm actually losing money because I have to clean those rooms. And so each time I sell a room, I'm making a little bit less, that $12 less, right? And so what we're looking at here is that identical net revenue. If I can go from 65% to 73, then that means at the end of the day, I can take home the same amount of money. But if I go from 65 and I drop my rate by $10 and I only achieve 70% occupancy, that means I'm spending more money on those variable costs than it's actually worth. It's better for me just to not take those extra ones at a lower rate. Okay. I can't tell you how many times as a front desk agent, somebody has walked in, maybe it's because of La Quinta, different clientele than maybe like a larger property. But so many times people at the front desk, when I was at the front desk, people would come up to me, they're like, what's your rate? And I tell them, okay, our rate today is $189. And they're like, for a La Quinta, $189? That's too expensive. That's my rate. I can ask them, do you have any discounts you might qualify for? Do you have AAA? Do you have AARP if they're older? Do you have any discounts or memberships that I can look at to see if you qualify for any discounts?
Like, for example, like the VA or the
So
disabled.
there's there might be a military discount, there may or may not be, right? So you can ask that. And it's usually a discount off of that daily rate. Okay. No, I don't have any discounts. Okay. Unfortunately, that's the best rate I can do is 189. And then they'll always say, well, if you want the money, like, would you rather have I can do $125. Would you rather have $125 and sell the room than to get no money and not sell the room? And my response was always like, my rate is 189. Okay. Because what they don't understand is if I sell it for 125, I still have all the cost that I have to do. Okay. And I want to be careful how I say this. Not to stereotype or not to presume about individuals, but people typically who are negotiating a lower rate are typically not the same people who will take as good of care of our property as other people that might. And so if you're already in a situation where you're negotiating a much lower rate, chances are that that person's probably not going to take as good of care of that room, and you're going to incur other costs like damages. And so it's really just say, this is our rate. This is what our rate is.
I agree and disagree.
There are exceptions to the rule.
There's some
Absolutely.
that are that way, and then there's some that go over and beyond, even with their disability.
Yeah. No, there's always an exception to the rule, right? But I guess what I'm saying, I'm trying to say it in a PC kind of way, is listen to your gut. If your gut says there's something off about this situation, then there probably is something off. And
Right.
so, you may not want to rent to somebody that is taking extra time to negotiate a much lower rate and argue about your rate. You might be able to recommend some other properties in the area. Okay. If you know that your hotel is 189 and you know a competitor because you've done some research that particular day, oh, they were selling rooms online for X amount. If your rate's 125, the hotel 3 blocks away is at 125. That's your budget, right? So you don't want to just necessarily dismiss them, right? You want to have some compassion because they could be working with a very specific budget, okay? So let's do another one. I think we're gonna do about 4 or 5 of these. So our current occupancy is 75%. The current ADR is 349. We are considering dropping it to 275. It's a pretty drastic drop, okay? And our variable cost is $25. What sets the variable cost? How do we know what variable cost to do? We can look at how much we pay our room attendants to clean the rooms. We can look at the quality of the amenities. So if it's a higher quality amenity, I had an opportunity when I was in Vegas over Christmas. I stayed one night at the Waldorf Astoria, right? So in addition to just your traditional soap, shampoo, and conditioner, they also had a tub that had soaking like Epsom salt in a little container. They also had like little vanity kits that had Q-tips and cotton balls. So all those little things add up to have a higher variable cost that we'd have to replace. Okay, so let's take a look here. Current ADR 349 minus that $25 variable cost. Okay, and we're looking at going to 275. Again, subtract that 25. So what is 349 minus 25? 324? Thank you. And then what is 275 minus 25? 250. Okay. That is where we get, I'm trying to color code these, that way you can kind of see where I get the numbers from. 324 minus or divided by 250 is equal to 1.29. Okay.
I ended up rounding it to 0.3. That's okay.
Usually 2 decimal places is okay. That 0.01 is not going to make a huge difference, but yeah, 0.129, 1.29, sorry. And then now our current occupancy percentage is 75. So we're going to multiply by 75%. And our answer is
97.2.
97.2. So in order to maintain the identical net revenue, I have to go from 75% occupancy to 97.2% occupancy. Okay. Is that achievable? We don't know. Are we looking at next week? Do you think it's possible to go from 75 to 97 in 1 week? Probably not. If we're looking at 3 months out, maybe. Okay. And so if we're looking 3 months out, because we're looking ahead and we're like, you know what, we're not the same level of reservations. We're not the same occupancy as we normally are, or what we budgeted to be. So we're going to drop our rate. If we drop our rate, that might encourage people to start making reservations, right? But does that mean that if we drop our rate to 275, it stays at 275? No. So as we start getting more reservations in and it starts picking up, well, maybe we might go to 295. And then maybe we go to 300, because maybe 349 was way too high. Okay. And so that is what we call dynamic pricing, which we'll talk about in a future chapter. It's called dynamic. It's not fixed. We can change it. But this formula just helps us determine if I'm going to consider changing it. This is the new occupancy I have to get to so that I don't make any less money. So I make the same amount of money. All right, so we have 2 more practices. Here we go. I'm going to let you do this one on your own, okay? And then compare your answers with your neighbor. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording while we're doing this so we don't have a whole bunch of silence. Someone please remind me to. All right, so if we look up here on the screen, remember we do the current divided by the new or the proposed. Okay, so 75 minus 15 is 60. $65 minus the 15 variable is 50. Come over here, the 60 divided by 50 is 1.2. And then we multiply that by our current occupancy percentage, which I color coded in purple. And we get 74.4%. So in order for me to go from 62 to 74%, that's 12% difference. Is it achievable? Depends on that time period. So let's do one last one. I left this one completely blank. Okay. So Leah, give us the current occupancy percentage. Any number between 1 and 100.
Well, 85%.
85%. Okay, so we're pretty full. Lily, what is our current ADR that you want to do?
175.
175. Okay. Yasmin, what is our variable costs? $13, okay. And Ileana, what is our new ADR? We're trying to get to 100%. So what ADR are we going to drop our rate to try to get to 100%? 130? Okay. So we have all of our information. Now let's plug it in. Our current is 175 minus 13. Our proposed is 130 minus that same 13. So what's 175 minus 13?
62.
162. Good. Okay. And then 130 minus 13,
17.
117. Good. Thank you, Edward. All right. So then we come over here, 162 divided by the 117. And what is my factor? 1 point. You get 38? Okay, cool. And so now that's our factor. We're going to multiply by that 85%. And what do we get?
117.3.
117.3. Okay. Is it possible? No, it's not possible. Okay. It is not possible.
So like, let's say we get questions like that on a quiz or something like that. Like, would you just put, no, it's not possible?
Your answer, if it's asking for a number, your answer would be 117.3.
Okay,
If it's asking for an explanation, then you might say, no, I wouldn't do that because it's impossible for me to get over 100%.
oh, okay.
Yep. So if it's just asking for a straight number, just put the number in, even if it's over 100. All right. So when we're looking at, is this achievable to go from our current to our new occupancy percentage? We have to take in consideration, are we a month out, a week out, a day out? Are we 3 months out? What is that time frame looking like? Okay. I'll give you one quick example, and this is the last slide. No, not yet. We'll talk about that in just a minute. I'll give you one last example before we move on to the last slide. A friend of mine, she used to own a Comfort Suites, which is near downtown. It's kind of close to the Alamo Dome. Okay. When the men's Final Four was here in 2025, she put together a room block. And when she put together a room block, she set aside a certain number of rooms. So that way, when people go online and they see their inventory, the inventory gets lower and lower, and those rooms are protected. Okay. And then 2 weeks before the men's Final Four, she released her room block. She put a minimum rate of $500 per room. And she put a minimum stay, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. She put a minimum length of stay of 4 nights, which means if their team lost on the first day, too bad. You got to pay for 4 nights. Because we don't want to sell one room and then have that room empty for 3 more nights because somebody goes home because their team lost. We want to guarantee we're maximizing our revenue. So on special events like that, they'll usually do a minimum length of stay. In this case, it was 4 nights. So $2,000 a night or a room. And she sold out in a matter of a day of those extra rooms. So those last few rooms that she held on to, she sold for $2,000 at a Comfort Suites. That's like paying $2,000 to go to La Quinta.
Wow.
And people paid it. Why?
Where
Because
else
it was
are you
Final
gonna go?
Four. And she was within walking distance of the Alamo Dome. She had her own parking lot, so they didn't have to pay for extra parking. She had breakfast every morning. She had an evening reception every day. So they kind of got a little bit more than just a hotel room out of that $2,000. Um, but so what she did is she kind of put those aside. She was very strategic and she wanted to have those specific number of rooms. And she gambled on being 100% sold out. But in the end, she ended up being 100% sold out. The last thing that we talk about is our gross operating profit. So, gross operating profit. We take our profit, our net income. Sorry, not our net income. Let me back up for a second. We take our total income and we subtract all those variable costs, those operating expenses like hourly wages, like linen, washing, laundering, all the replacing all the different things. So that anything that relates to an operational expense, we take that total revenue and subtract those operational expenses. And then we end up getting what we call our gross operating profit. Okay. And really, that number, that gross operating profit, is oftentimes the number that's used to gauge whether somebody is managing the operation effectively. If they're managing the resources, if they're not overspending money on inventory, if they're not overspending on labor, then that gross operating profit will be relatively high. And then we can use that as a way to whether or not people are managing the operational expenses effectively. The lower that gross operating profit is, then we still have to take out all of our fixed income, fixed expenses. And that means the lower our profit's going to be. Okay. So if we have somebody like a management company who is staffing our hotel and they have all housekeepers come in and we're only at 40% occupancy, well, that's a waste in labor. And so that labor expense is going to go up and that gross operating profit's going to go down. And we may reevaluate that when we are evaluating whether or not we want to keep that management company managing our hotel or not. All right. Questions, comments, concerns?
Are we gonna be using that quite often or?
No. It's just more, I'm just kind of just explaining it just kind of in general. Not necessarily in this class. In like as you go out to the industry, a lot of like I said, a lot of places are using that gross operating profit. It's the same thing, right? Per available room. So gross operating profit per available room. So we take what that gross operating profit is and divide by all the rooms during that period.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. I'm going to stop the recording so that way we can separate chapters